71, it feels like it's approaching me a little quicker right now, but it's approaching all of us. So we have to have, take the time to address the issues that we're going to be talking about today. Now, what do I see as one of the biggest problems is when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm sitting with the patient or their family and the patient is dying and there's not an advance directive, the family starts to squabble. Well, mom would want so-and-so. Oh, no, mom wouldn't want that. You know, so one of the very first points about in this 5 wishes is, and on wish number 1, is who is the person you want to make health decisions for you when you can't make them for yourself, okay? The best thing we can do for our children and or family is to answer those questions. Now, people say, well, I'll tell one that people say, look, Jeanette, where do we want to be buried? And I'll say, I want to talk about it. You know what I'm saying to you. Well, or Jeanette, what do you want on your tombstone? I'm talking about what I want on my tombstone. I don't even have a tombstone yet. But we have to start the conversation somewhere. The problem is determining how to start it, how you talk about it, who you talk to. I learned by sad experience, you've got to first listen. You have to listen and you have to observe. Who's really the decision maker in the family? Because a lot of times it's a person you would never think it was, you know. So you have to know who has the capacity and ability to be your representative, okay? So that's what this first wish is. Who is the person you want to make your healthcare decisions for you? And so you're going to, in this, you use this form, you can use this. Now, once you write it, you can't change it, that is not true. You can always change it. Once you do this little post and the physician signs it, you can still change it. You can change it the next day. In Louisiana, thank God it's easy to make changes. That's good and bad, you know. But you can make a change on the napkin, you know, and sign it, as long as you have capacity to do so. And a lot of times we say to ourselves, and I know you all understand what I'm saying, my stepdad has dementia, okay? And we're dealing with him and several other members of my family that are in memory units, okay? And I know that there's some days you just think they have capacity to do anything. And then the next day, they don't know who they are, where they are. So, you know, that is an issue in families a lot of times. They say, well, Dad talks to me. My stepsister yesterday said, well, he can talk to you if you go about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you know what I'm saying to you. So whenever you're thinking about this wish number 1, you need to really think about it. You know, who do you want to make those decisions for you? And then clearly document it and tell your family. The family, the best thing you can do, I have dealt with families that are just spitting and throwing things at each other. And we sit down around the table, and after they spit and throw for a while, they start to settle down, generally speaking, and start to talk to each other. If there's someone that's calm and can kind of direct the conversation. So, wish number 1, make your wishes known. You know, you can't beat around the bush. A lot of what I said to you when I first came in here is there's no question that's too elementary, but a lot of kids, according to their age, just don't want to ask it. You know, they're either uncomfortable or it's like when you walk down the street. You ever walk down the street and pass and someone's coming towards you that's in a wheelchair, that's handicapped? You ever notice? Very few people really look at them. You know, that's what happens when you start talking about end-of-life issues. People don't look at you really. So when they're not really looking at you, and you're not just sitting there in an environment that you can talk to each other, it's not going to be a very usually productive time together. So I would suggest the first thing you do before you even do this is you find a time when you can sit down with your family and start talking about. You know, when my mother-in-law was dying, it was hard for the kids. She wanted to move in with me, so we moved her. We sent a flight up to Oklahoma and picked her up. And because her son, my husband, is her oldest child and the only boy, you know. So we moved her, we set up our bedroom and everything like her bedroom and stuff at home. And you know, the kids were so unsettled. They really were, because she got sick real quick, and it wasn't long after my husband's father died. So I called him and I said, look, let's have the family get together, and let's have one of our pastors came over, and I said, let's have communion together, and let's have dinner together, and then let's have communion. Let's just talk about, with your mom, let's just talk about things, good memories. And as we talked about good memories, and we started through acknowledging, even if it was not directly, acknowledging that there was a big change coming, because I knew she was dying when she came to us. You know, the family just slowly started to be able to talk to each other about death and about her dying. And you know what? Maybe that will never happen in your family, but I pray, if I could pray anything for you, it would be that it would happen. That you could talk to each other and make a plan so that when it's time, when the death does occur, you can be close as a family and not still be squabbling over stuff. You know, because kids do squabble, you know that. So, okay, number one.
Before we go on, I think if we can scoot your chair back actually a little bit, I might move your whole little table closer to the computer. I think there's a bit of an echo. So if you want to scoot your chair back this way,
Sure.
whole little thing. That way you can keep facing this way, but you're a little closer to the computer. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Questions? So, okay. That was the easy part. Wish number two, my wish for the kind of medical treatment I want or don't want. Now, there are so many. That question, that whole thought is pretty, it's not just cut and dry, right? If you look at the little post, can you give them one?
Absolutely.
This gives you a quick, so if you look up at the top, you're going to see goals of care. Even your big goals at the end of life, the two big ones, the biggest ones, are comfort and safety. Okay? That just means so many different things to so many people, okay? So if I were filling this out, when I fill this out, I try to clearly define what many of you, your life-limiting disease would perhaps be Alzheimer's disease, okay? Your goals of care, your big goals of care are comfort and safety. There's a bajillion others, but those are the biggest ones, you know. So, everyone asks you, do you want to have it? Do you want a DNR? Does everybody know what that means? Do you want, okay, a DNR means it's invasive. And I would love it if you would really consider reading this CPR. Think about CPR. It's my doctor, our doctor that we work with, our medical director for 15 years, he's still working with us, but he got this huge promotion, so anyway. He would say, you know, there's a point you want to protect the people you love from certain things, you know. And when you consider a DNR, you have to consider the whole picture. You know, people say, well, I just want this, right? Well, you can't kind of separate the DNR elements, okay? The DNR means do not resuscitate me, okay? Do not. Now, some people want, they think, well, I want you to resuscitate me, but I don't want you to put me on a machine. And you're in the throes of resuscitation. You know, one of my nurses worked with me. She's retired. She was a head of a hospice. She retired, not our hospice. She was the head of a hospice in here. Retired and called me and said, I want to go to work with you. I said, good. Well, she was her mama died in our care. This was after she worked with us for years. She's worked with us now at least 10 years. She retired. Then her husband died, but I've known him forever, you know. And she called me one day, and I was headed across the river to see a patient, and she said, Jeanette, her husband wasn't doing well, and I think I'm going to have the ambulance come in. Well, they took him to the hospital. I walked in, and they were doing CPR on him, and I'm thinking, I know she didn't want CPR. I knew that. I know her, and I know her. So I said, sure. You know, I walked in the middle of the code, and I said, sure. Is this what you want? And she said, I said, well, you need to call it. That you have the right to say what you want here. They just didn't know what they would have done that. That's the whole thing. You know, when the medical people, when their adrenaline starts going, you have to have adrenaline. You don't want a lazy, slow nurse in intensive care and CPR. You want someone whose adrenaline's pumping and she's focused, she or he's focused on taking care of whatever the issue is. So DNR, that's the first thing in this little post. So it's really, I'm going to show this to break out to you what you're generally talking about. The next thing what they want to know is what medical interventions you want. And this clearly states what those are basically, okay? Full treatment, where the primary goal is prolonging life, biomedically effective needs, use treatments such as mechanical ventilation, advanced airway interventions, and cardioversion indicated. Selective treatment, you just it's kind of a, I hate to say it, but this is kind of a menu of what you would or would not want, okay? Part C on this is, do you want artificial nutrition by tube? Now, tubes used to be for years, you put it down the nose and now most tubes are G tubes, okay? So you have a tube that goes into your stomach, and that's what you're fed through. Generally, that's what you receive meds through, etc. And then, or do you not, okay? And then it talks about, if you read this, it can be kind of confusing, but these are the things you need to know before you need to know them, okay? So, with 5 wishes, what have you told your caregiver you want? Do you not want to be in pain? You want to be comfortable. Wish 3 says that what can be done to make you comfortable? A lot of families will say, I want them to be comfortable, but I don't want them to be knocked down. Well, a lot of times when you first start a pain medication, you're going to be knocked out for a while because you haven't get used to it. After you've been on it, just say a very cheesy patch, pain patch maybe, fentanyl patch. When you first put it on, your body's first acclimating to it, you're more knocked out. And a lot of times when you come home from the hospital, you're on your pain meds, you're really knocked out. Why? Because you're exhausted after being in the hospital, okay? So once you get pain relief, you rest and relax, okay? So you need to say, do you want to be offered food and fluids by mouth? If it is safe for me to eat and drink, I want to be kept clean and warm. Now that makes sense, you know. You want to be kept clean and warm. you want to be given food or not? People say, well, as you well know, as Alzheimer's and various diseases progress, you lose the ability to mechanically swallow as effectively. So the patient will start to pocket food, they don't swallow effectively. A lot of times they get slipped, we produce a quart of saliva a day. So they're having to handle their secretions, plus they're having to handle whatever you're giving them. So if you give a person something that's a little thicker usually, they can swallow it more effectively. Well, why do they cough? Because they're not swallowing it. When you're eating and you don't swallow effectively, you cough. Don't you hate to do that? I hate it when I'm in a restaurant and start coughing, but that happens when you don't swallow effectively. So, do you want to be fed? Some people say, they can't really, we're not sure if they can swallow effectively. Well, sometimes you just go to comfort feedings and fluids. And each person, because we know them, if they're ours usually, we know how well they can tolerate certain things. So, what do you want as far as food and fluid? People say to me more than not, I don't want to starve them to death. Well, as the body starts to shut down, we require less food and fluids, etc. Our body just slows down. We're miraculously made to shut ourselves down. We're miraculous as any computer, okay? So we're made to shut ourselves down. As our bodies shut down, we require less food. We require less fluids. A lot of times they'll have a little bit of a fever. That's not necessarily a bad thing, okay? As the body shuts down, endorphins are released, and that's a natural pain and mood elevator. So, I do not want anything done or admitted by our doctors if my doctors and nurses with the intention of taking my life. Well, that just makes sense. And, I can't tell you how many people say, well, can you just, people think hospice people kill people. I say, I can't think of a less, no. Most of us want our lives, we want to die a natural death, what we call it now, just be allowed for our body to be allowed to do what it does on its own, okay? So, what does life support treatment mean to you? A lot of people just don't know. So a lot of doctors, maybe we say, well, our doctor will talk to us. Doctors don't like to talk about stuff like this. They like to talk about getting well. Now they're being incented or paid by Medicare now to advance care plan with patients. Your 3 wishes tells you to go meet with your doctor. Well, I'm going to tell you, if you're going to go meet with your doctor, set an appointment with him and tell him that's why you want to meet with him. So you can let him know what your wishes are, okay? And most doctors, unless they've been your doctor for years, they're just going to tell you, well, just make sure you have everything done. That's just how it is out there now. Okay, so wish number 2 still deals with all these things. If you're in a coma, and I expect you to wake up and recover, what? Then what? On this medical interventions, part B, section B of the La Post, if you look down at comfort-focused treatment, the primary goal is maximizing comfort. We're going to use medication binding route to provide pain and symptom management, use oxygen, suctioning, and manual treatment of airway obstruction is needed to relieve symptoms. We don't want to use treatments listed in full selective treatment, and we're going to allow this death we're going to allow death to come naturally. That seems like an oxymoron, but the reason the reason families are always going to have problems because you're grieving way before a person dies, aren't you? My mom's grieving now. And I told her the other day, I said, Mama, you're grieving, you're grieving. Just, let's talk about what that means and why you're having these problems, memory problems and this and that. It's just hard for families to talk to each other. It's just a sad thing, but it is. And it's hard to make these decisions because you miss them. You miss the person. And it talks about coma, permanent severe brain damage, not expected to recover. And a lot of people, when we met patients with Alzheimer's disease and they meet criteria for hospice, a lot of times because it is such a slow, gradual decline, to meet criteria, you have to have other comorbidities. That's what this is talking about here. You can have a disease, say Alzheimer's, but you have other conditions that are going to affect your end of life, like diabetes or heart disease, lung disease, etc. That's what this is addressing here. Wish number 3, my wish for how comfortable I want to be. There's not a whole lot that's left out of these 5 wishes. They've taken a lot of time to really query, to ask questions that lead you to making the decisions you need to make. Now, I have to tell you, whenever Rick said, well, you have about an hour. I don't mind speaking, but I prefer to speak to small groups where people can ask me questions and I can answer their questions. It's so much information. And then throw COVID in. COVID really messed us up, y'all. I know I don't know who you're dealing with in this, or any of you have people in nursing homes and or assisted livings or whatever. But, staffing short right now everywhere. COVID has made everybody a little, so you just need to know that the medical community isn't necessarily going to slow down and stop and help you make these decisions. They want to, but it's just kind of cuckoo out there. But you can ask questions, and you do have resources out there. There's just a lot of information to wade through. And you get there, you think, I started dealing with 5 wishes years ago. But when I picked it up again, I thought, this is great. It really is. Just starting. Okay, am I telling the truth? It's a lot of information in that. It is. But it's good. It's well done. Okay? So my point is, invest the time in taking a good look at it, because it will lead you in the right direction. Okay? So, wishes for how comfortable I want to be. Oh my goodness. And people think a lot of times comfort is, I'm going to be in pain. But the issues you deal with comfort, especially now, think about anxiety and depression, anxiety, depression, nausea, the myalgias that we have because we're aging and we, pain. Do you work? I wish to have more baths often. I wish to be kept fresh and clean all the time. Some people do not want that. I can tell you on that. And whenever you start talking about that, as you get older, then how does that translate in your house? I want to have. My dad is about 100 pounds bigger than my mom. Okay. They went out to dinner recently, or to lunch, and he's in a memory unit now because he wandered so much, and Mama just couldn't deal with him anymore from the standpoint of physically couldn't. They got in the restaurant and he went to the bathroom. Well, he never came out. Well, she finally went looking for him, and his daughter, my stepsister, who was wonderful with him and with us, was there, and they live way up Iowa, okay, middle of nowhere. Anyway, he was in the bathroom, couldn't figure out how to get out of the stall, had poo everywhere. It was everywhere. And Mama, who's 89, was trying to take care of him. Well, you all know what I'm talking about. As you age, taking care of your children whenever they're babies and you're diapering them is a whole lot different from taking care of an adult that you're trying to diaper for. So whenever you consider how you want to live, my kids said, "Mama, we'll never put you in a nursing home." I said, "Oh no, I'll put myself in a nursing home." You know, I know I want to be clean and dry, and if I can't physically afford someone to do that, so that my children would clean and dry me if I needed them to, but do I want them to? And that's the things you have to ask yourself. You know, when Medicare talks to you, they say these three things: are they willing, available, and able? Okay, think about that now. Are your children willing to do this? Are they available? Most of our kids live, you know, we were just talking about my daughter lives down in Tampa. She would help me in a second. She lives in Tampa. Are they able? You know, can my 89-year-old mother diaper my dad? No. If she wants to, she's willing, she's available, but she's not able. You know, Medicare asks those three questions. And you have to ask yourself that when you're looking at your resource pool. You know, who do I have that's willing? Who do I have that's available? And who do I have that's able? If they meet all three of those criteria, then maybe that's someone you could use. Otherwise, when we get to this, how do I want the end of my life to be, we have to look at resource pool too. So this leads you that way. So it's good. This is great. This resource is probably the best checklist, one of the best checklists for advanced care planning. And that's what I'm talking to you about now is advanced planning. Okay. How do I wish? How comfortable do I want to be? I mean, this is asking everything. Do I want a personal care like shaving, nail clipping, hair brushing, teeth? My daughter's ex-husband's aunt was put in a facility recently. And I was in there speaking to a group, probably 2 weeks ago. And I saw her, and I thought, you know, because we had kept up with her and made sure that we help as much as we can, because we've been around her for years. But she would no more want to look like she looked that day. She was out in the midst of a whole bunch of people. She's a very proud lady. And so I called her family and I said, you know, we need an intervention here. We need to figure out what we need to do for resources. Because even though she's in a facility, her hair was undone, So, you know, does my stepdad want to be shaved every day? You know, this just walks you down through all the nitty-gritty stuff, okay? And then, how do you wish for people to treat you? Do you want to be visited by a clergy chaplain? I mean, that's in the middle of this whole list. You know, some people do, some people don't. Clergy chaplains don't just come to clergy and chapel. Okay? They come to visit too. They're great visitors. Okay? And they love to talk to people, usually. You know, the chaplains that work with me love to sing with their patients. I got a video a couple of weeks ago from the chaplain said, I want to show you this. He was singing with one of our patients who never opens her eyes, never says a word, never does anything. You don't even know she's there. Honey, he started singing Amazing Grace or something. Those little lips started to move. She started singing with him. He said, can you believe this? Don't you love this? I said, yes, I do. You know, who knows? Who knows? Anyway, who knows? You know, all I know is this. I said that I walked in a nursing home recently and walked into one of the nurses' stations. I make rounds in facilities we're in. And I said, I walked in, the nurses were just fussing what they were all in. So I I stood there, not interrupted, you know. And so finally, they looked up and said, well, Miss Jeanette, what do you think? And I'm thinking, oh, Lord. I said, look, this is what I know. God sees what you do. I said, whether you feel appreciated or not, God knows what you do. That's all that matters. You know, when we talk to each other, deal with each other, whether you're a believer or not, that's not the issue. The issue is, do we really care about what's going on? And in our families, if we really care, we will talk ahead of time. There's nothing worse than a family bickering and fighting when there's someone lying against it. It's so depressing. Your children will always remember that. Talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. If your kids all they remember about grandma's funeral is that everybody was mad and fighting, that's just not a good thing, you know. So, you know, do we care enough about each other to have the conversations that have to be had? And for now, so number 5, what I wish or want my loved ones to know. Now, you know, not everybody does what I do or I did with my mother-in-law, but I think it's a good thing to call everybody in, have a meal together if you're used to doing that. Everybody's favorite foods, things grandma used to make or whatever, and have communion together or have your pastor come in and sit with you and the kids then, all the kids are there, and then share memories, you know, take time to share memories. What do we want them to remember? I wish I had that my family and friends know that I love them. I wish to be forgiven for the times I've hurt my look. I had this lady that was extremely accomplished, and she was in her 90s, and her kids told me she was one girl. One day, he said, Miss Jeanette, can we come talk to you? I said, sure. So they sat up across from my desk, and I knew there was problems there. And so they said, you know, we want to just get to the heart of the matter because we know what that mom's at the end of her life. We don't like her. We've never liked her, haven't liked her for years. And I sitting there just, you know, being receptive and, they said, we want to do something about it. We don't want this to be our reason. I said, no, you don't want to be standing in front of your refrigerator at 3 o'clock one morning, open it up, the light comes on, and and you say, oh my God, you know, why didn't I resolve this? Why do I have these regrets? So a lot of families just need to be in an environment where they can ask for forgiveness, you know, or, you know, because the Bible says we should forgive us our sins to the Father, that our Father forgives our sins as we forgive those who have sinned against us. The little caveat in there is without resentment. Can you forgive without resentment? A lot of times you can't forgive. I know I've got things in my life, but did I forgive them without resentment? That's okay. I wish to know, I wish for my family and friends to know that I don't fear death, you know. I wish for all my family members to make peace with each other. I mean, you have a lot of leverage when you're dying. But you do. So you can say to your kids, hey, I'm dying. Look, you know, could you just say, I wish for my family and friends to think about what I was like before I came seriously. I don't want them to remember me in this way after my death, you know. Wish for my family and friends and caregivers to respect my wishes even if they don't agree with them. Now, let's go back to that step 1. Wish one, right here. Your kids need to clearly know if you make this directive decision, your decision. They don't have a decision to make. I mean, in the name of Jesus, be as kind as you can. But this isn't your decision to make, children. I'm trying to take this responsibility away from you having to do this. This is my decision. This is what I want. Do not change it. Let's not get to the end, very end, and say, oh no, let's go to the hospital. You know, when the parent said, I want to die at home, this is my home, I want to die here, blah, blah, blah. Don't change it. I wish some of my family and friends could get counseling if they have trouble with that. Bereavement counseling, you know, everywhere in the world, there's these grief share now, right? They're all over. I know we put out a letter or a memo or a letter to people that we deal with every few months because there's more and more coming about where these grief share programs. After you dead, you want your body to be what? Buried or cremated. You know, that's big. Amazing how many people are being cremated now. And most people don't, families won't tell you this. They tell me because they know they can help. Okay? Look, you only have a certain amount of money, what should we do? You know, and that's a big issue. I mean, it is. Just a typical burial at a funeral home is going to be what, at least 15,000 or more, somewhere in that day. Well, then you might get one of the blue light special or something. You know, they're expensive. Cremations are not as expensive. And you know, most families don't want to be so crass to say, I'm kind of shopping the prices. I mean, you do, you know. Churches, funeral homes still has the least expensive. I mean, I'm not connected to them in any way, but people ask me that all the time. But now more and more places have cremation available. Not every funeral home does, you know. They can ask someone to cremate for them and then receive the body back. But, you know, you have to know those things. You should know those things before you actually, I mean, if your family member dies at home, if they're on hospice, the coroner is not involved. If they're not on hospice, the coroner is involved. So the coroner and the hospice is going to want to know who should be involved, because someone has to come and receive the body. So before, while you have time to think about it, you should be thinking about it. Okay. My body or relation couldn't follow location. Following person knows my funeral wishes. So this is like I said, I haven't really looked through 5 wishes for a little while, but it's really it's good. It's excellent. Okay, so what do you have to do? It tells you everything back here on page number 10. It tells you what to do. Okay? The state of Louisiana is very simple. You should have 2 witnesses. It tells you who can and who should not be a witness. And then what you do after you complete the 5 wishes. And then you even have a little available to you, a little wallet or purse card here. Okay? I mean, it just gives you everything you could ever possibly want to know about, you know. So number 1 is the person I want to make care decisions for me. Wish number 2 is the kind of medical treatment I want or don't want. Number 3 is how comfortable I want to be. Number 4 is how I want people to treat me. And number 5 is what I want my loved ones to know. Okay? Now, do you have to have an attorney to do this? No, you do not. Now, I can't remember, I will tell you the truth, if Louisiana requires only for, notarizations only required for residents of Missouri, North Carolina, South Carolina, and West Virginia. Okay? That's at the bottom of page 10. So this doesn't even have to be notarized. Now, one of my friends used to tell one of my attorney friends used to tell his clients, you can write your wishes on a napkin in the state of Louisiana and they'll be honored. So, I mean, whether it's true or not, I don't want to challenge it, but I think it is true. That's a lot of information in a little short time. I happily, I tell people this everywhere. I am the owner of hospice and its care, but I have so many people who just come to my office that aren't on hospice. They just have questions, so they call me on the phone and say, Jeanette, you know, blah, blah, blah. I have people all over the country call me and ask me questions. I will gladly answer your questions if you need an answer. A lot of times you just need an impartial person that has some knowledge. You say to yourself, Jeanette, and Alzheimer's services probably have this available too, but anytime you can call me and say, look, I'm going to get some of my sisters together, we want to start talking about this. Can you come over and just have coffee with us and talk? Now, I'm going to try to sell you a hospice, but I am going to try to sell you on advanced planning. I think that's a service to the community if I do that. It's a service to my family. I met with my aunt recently, my cousins. My aunt fell, you know, when you have Alzheimer's, you're going to lose trunk control at some point in time generally, correct? Okay. When you lose trunk control and you're in a facility, what's going to happen? You're going to fall. People get mad and they think that the facility's not, but unless you restrain a person, they're going to fall. And sometimes even when you're sitting right next to them, they're going to fall. Or whenever you're walking them to the bathroom, they're going to start to fall. So, you know, it's so stressful. My aunt fell, she hit her head, she had a hemorrhage, cranial hemorrhage, and she died. They went to the hospital, they really couldn't do anything. So they brought her home, and I flew in, or I came in from here to Oklahoma. And you know, we just sat with the family and said, look, because they were on such a guilt trip. I said, look, you know, in this state, in most states, you cannot restrain a person, chemically or physically. It's against the law. So what do? You know, then you have the other issues to deal with, falls and injuries, possible injuries and falls, and the aggressive behaviors. And one of our patients recently put their fist through a window. You know, I mean, people do things like that, and they don't know, and the family is under stress. So if you have your sisters or your family and you need counseling, I'm sure they can help you, or I will help you. If I cannot help you, I can direct you in a way where someone can. Questions?
If anybody on Zoom has any questions, y'all can put those in the chat as well. All of these materials for anybody on Zoom, all of these materials, either you can reach out to me, I can either mail it to you, or you're welcome to pick them up from our office.
Do you have a question, Gwen? Sure.
I know these things need to be done, they need to be discussed, but
I know.
yeah, procrastination.
I had this nurse, she was about 6 feet tall. She was kind of loud. She was aggressive. She was a great nurse, and she was very young, and I thought, you know, I think she's going to settle down as she ages and gets older. But you know what? I mean, she would have because she would just ask the patient's family, just straight out, different things. And I kept telling her, but you know what? Her patients did great because all the questions were answered. Because she had whatever it was that just figured out your mind. That's the hardest part, man. Yeah. Stephanie, you good?
So, well, hospice in his care. So is this just for hospice care, or people transitioning?
Yeah.
The organization.
Or for transitioning?
Right. The hospice in his care. This organization, is it strictly for hospice patients,
Yes.
or is it strictly for hospice?
Yeah, you know, the caveat to that is this, again, like I said, there are times that you just need information, and whoever you love or care for, it's not the criteria for hospice. But, you know, I can give you information or help you, or they will. You know, we can give you, my social worker, you know, social workers are great for resources, you know, so your social worker here, I'm sure has a bajillion resources, but you don't have to be on hospice in his care for me to give you information. and just to guide you and say, you can say, Jeanette, I don't know what to do, and I can guide you to the right place, or I can just answer your questions. So it is also for transitioning. A lot of times a hospice referral takes forever to convert to a net. But all the time before, like I've had hospice referrals that are months. I get a referral and I go in and we talk and I realize the patient doesn't meet criteria for hospice, you know. So we develop that relationship and we answer questions and they know they can call us if they're afraid or they don't know what to do. I had a patient, a family I dealt with for months, we finally put their mother on hospice. And she did stabilize and we had to discharge her. Well, we tell patients that if you have a limited hospice through Medicare if you meet criteria, but when you don't, then you would have to be discharged. So her daughter called me, she was about probably every 2 or 3 months. She'd say, well, Jeanette, this is what's going on with mom. I'd say, okay. And I'd go over with that mom, she still was stable, So she called me, it was probably 6 months or a year after we discharged her. And she said, Jeanette, I really think mom's declining, and would you come and talk to us and just take a look at her? I said, sure. So I went over, her mama they had built her neatest little aviary type of thing. And so she could be outside if she wanted. And so she comes out, the mama finally comes out. She walks up, she stands, I'm sitting at a table, we're talking to the kids, and she stands across from me, and she really doesn't know who I am, but she's has great social skills. So she said, and I noticed she's holding her pants, And so I said to her, well, how are you doing? She said, just shook her head. I said, you feeling good? I said to her daughter, I said, well, is she losing weight? Is she having more frequent infections? So the daughter says, Mama, are you losing weight? And her mom lets go of her pants and goes like this, and her pants would stretch to the ground. And the daughter said, I think she's losing weight. So, yeah.
I have a question. So, the 5 wishes and any type of advanced directive things you can do at any time. Ms. Jeanette, do you have a recommendation of when someone should start planning for their wishes? Or when to start documenting your preferences?
Well, as we age, of course, I have the ability to name, and I told you I didn't want to talk to my husband about all this stuff. But I am getting to the point that I realize that I need to start making my wishes now. My suggestion, of course, if there's an event that happens that makes you aware, sometimes it just slaps us in the face that we're getting older and we're getting closer to the end of our lives. But as you get to the point you need to start thinking about end-of-life care, you definitely need to start talking about this. And so you say, well, what would that mean, for instance, in an Alzheimer's patient, for instance? Okay. Are they failing to thrive? That is the issue. That's what happens there. Are they losing weight even though they're eating? Are they having frequent infections? Are they having to go back and forth to the hospital? Are they having frequent falls? Do they have other comorbid conditions like cardiac disease, things of that nature? As they begin to decline, you definitely need to be talking about this. Did that answer?
Yeah. Any other questions from folks on Zoom? Well, if y'all do, y'all can feel free to email me. I'm going to send a follow-up email to everybody from Zoom that'll have a link to an evaluation. For the folks that are in here, y'all have an evaluation. And I can have a link to the online sample of the 5 wishes. And of course, if y'all wanted to come by the office, or I can mail y'all a 5 wishes and all of the resources here. And I can also have Ms. Jeanette's email address in there if y'all ever wanted to contact her.
And there's a video in that packet, that box I gave you.
Okay.
Of the 5 wishes video
Oh,
as well,
cool.
which is good.
Yeah.
Ladies, thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.